In today's video, we're going to discuss the 5 things that you need to stop doing 5 years before retirement. We are the owners of Generations Wealth Partners, and we have helped clients all over the United States transition into retirement at the right time.
A lot of information you find out there will tell you how to retire in the next 5 years, but really, unfortunately, no one talks about how to prepare in those 5 years before, and importantly, the things that you should stop doing. So luckily for you, we're going to talk about that today. We're going to break down some ideas that maybe you've never heard of, and not only give you some ideas of what to do, but what to not do. And sometimes that's more important. But let's get to the video.
Okay. So this will be fun. Okay. I think you and I are developing a reputation for telling things to people that they're like, wait, what? Mm-hmm. That's not what other people tell me. One of my big things is avoid probate.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can do that without a trust. Okay. Not always, and it's becoming more rare, and I'm a huge fan of not going through probate. Okay. It's just, it's not typical advice that you're going to hear from an attorney. And I've heard you as a financial advisor tell people things that's like, wait, that's not typical financial advisor information. And I think people appreciate that.
That's true. And we're very passionate about telling you our perspective on it. We're going to tell you everything. We're going to tell you the truth. What you decide to do with it is really up to you. But very transparently, we're interested in sleeping well at night. And if we know stuff that you don't know that could help your retirement and we don't tell you, that's on us.
Yeah.
But if we tell you and you don't do anything with it, well, my conscience is clear.
Yep.
And so that's the idea here.
Yeah. So the first thing to stop doing is kind of a backwards way, but stop procrastinating.
Yeah.
It is time to do something. I've had one of my favorites. She was pushing 90. I mean, she was mid 80s, late 90s. And she's like, well, I thought it was time I do something. You think?
It's probably time to get started on this.
It's probably time to do your estate plan.
There was a study that went around. I don't remember who did it. This went around a few years ago, but they said that the average American spends more time planning an annual vacation, just one, than they spend planning their entire retirement.
Man.
Now, I hope that you can just sit with that for a moment. The stakes are really high here. Having seen a lot of retirements go really well and seen some retirements get off to a rocky start and hopefully they can recover, and seeing some that aren't going to go well, pretending the issue is not there is not going to solve it. And unfortunately, it's more complex today than it's ever been before.
Well, and let me just say, particularly on estate planning, is if you don't do anything, it is going to be tremendously more expensive.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a very disruptive to your family. If you don't plan, you end up in court. And that is not in anyone's best interest. It is expensive. It is public. It is just bad. And so I'm begging you, the first and easiest thing here is to do something.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think even more candidly, what we need to say is you actually have a retirement plan and you have an estate plan. Whether you've developed your own or not, and one that fits your goals, your desires, and your personal situation, that's up to you and it is on you. And so the default plan, in our opinion, and I think we could show data, is suboptimal.
Yeah.
The default retirement plan doesn't make sense for most people.
Okay.
So that's number one. Don't stop putting it off.
Stop putting it off. Okay.
Stop putting it off.
The second thing I took kind of personal, because before you were my financial advisor, I thought, I don't want to think about it. I'm just going to put it simply on autopilot. And all of my investments were in a time targeted, what's it called?
Target date fund.
Target date fund. It's like I should retire when I put half of it thinking I would retire at 65 and half of it when I retired at 70. It's done. It's set. Nothing to worry about. But our step number two is get out of those.
Stop having everything in a target date fund. Now, this might make some folks upset. And in a technical sense, we have to say this isn't any tax, investment, or legal advice. But here's what you want to think about, okay? This is an area that is suboptimal for you.
Yeah.
Okay. And so if you want to have the most control and the most impact over your retirement, a target date fund is really not a good way to do it.
Yeah.
On one hand, yeah, it's easy and it's set it and forget it. On the other hand, it might not actually work the way that you think it works. And likely the fees are higher than what you actually think they are.
That's true. And so are you telling folks to now try to time the market?
No, we don't need to time the market, but
Okay.
we need to be more thoughtful about the asset allocation that we have.
Okay.
And timing the market is actually somewhat implicit in a target date fund. And,
Really?
and what we find, what they're doing is they're going, look, the prevailing idea, the idea is that the closer you get to retirement, the closer we get to that target date, we should have a higher bond allocation than equity allocation.
Right.
And the reason for that, this is a conventional idea. It's not wisdom because it doesn't actually work. But the idea is that bonds are, sometimes you'll hear the word safe, sometimes you'll hear the word conservative. The idea is that bonds are a hedge against volatility in a portfolio. And in most instances, by and large, it doesn't actually bear out to be accurate. And what I will point you to is 2021 through 2023, rough time period here. This was the worst bond market in the history that we've been tracking them, at least in the last 150 years. If that's not a good enough data set, I'm sorry, we have a different issue. And probably you should turn the video off. We can't help you. But here's what I need you to understand. During that time period, the aggregate bond index was down just as much as the S&P was.
Wow.
In that time period. And so what we find is that in the times that it's necessary to have a hedge against volatility, bonds are ineffective. And also, this is very intuitive, the expected returns for bonds are not as high as the expected returns for equities in the long run.
That's true.
And so if you want to hold a bunch of bonds in your portfolio, fine, but you need to understand the risks of that. And in my opinion, holding bonds in the portfolio, especially in the 5 years before and after retirement, is extremely risky. And if you're willing to take that risk, great, for the sake of saving a little bit of time to educate yourself or even get professional help to make sure that it works. But saving a penny could cost you a fortune in this situation.
Absolutely. And so just to be clear, you're not telling people, go from this set it and forget it to being hyperly involved.
Nope.
But you do need to, markets are different, things happen, and there are some very creative, relatively safe things you can do to get your money to do substantially better than.
Well, and I think the big idea that we want to work on is most of the time, and I appreciate your candor earlier, most of the time the reason people use a target date fund is because it's easy enough to think about it.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But when you're in the accumulation phase, which we've talked about in other videos, when we're saving up for a nest egg, you're building for retirement, the average annual return that you get is more important than the sequence in which you get those returns. And when you approach retirement, it's different. And the strategies that we need to use and the way we need to think about things is different. And so what I'm really telling you is I'm trying to pique your interest here so that you educate yourself and make a different decision. Build a portfolio that's customized to you, not what makes the fund manager happy.
All right. We killed that sacred cow.
Yeah, we did.
Now, what's number 3?
Number 3 is stop avoiding paying attention to asset location. So number 2, we talked about asset allocation. What should we own and how should we own it? That's really what that is. But number 3 is something that most advisors don't talk about and some don't even know about. I say that because I see it in portfolios all the time, these big mistakes. But number 3 is asset location. So there's asset allocation. What do we own? And then there's asset location. If we have multiple account types, and most people do, where should we own those assets? Okay. And so this is kind of, tailing off of number 2 here. Let's say you've got $500,000 in a brokerage account and $500,000 in a traditional IRA and $500,000 in a Roth IRA. This is a nice split, and you can choose any number here, but those are easy round numbers to use. Let's say that you're working with a professional, you get an asset allocation you're comfortable with, and let's say for argument's sake that you do decide to take some bonds in the portfolio. You don't take my advice, you take a bunch of bonds. And let's say your asset allocation is 60-40, 60% equities, 40% bonds. What I see all the time, especially in a managed portfolio, if you have an advisor who specializes in accumulation, this is what big brokerage houses, you'll do a risk tolerance questionnaire and they'll say, okay, you should be in a 60-40, and then they apply a model to all of those accounts. And so what that is in the brokerage account, it's 60% stock, 40% bonds. In the IRA, it's 60% stock, 40% bonds. In the Roth, it's 60% stock, 40% bonds. You get the idea. Mm-hmm. Now, frankly, in my opinion, this is malpractice. This is like 101, and I'm shocked when I see this. And I see even really highly educated professionals make this mistake, okay? And so here's what you need to understand. If you're going to own stocks and you're going to own bonds and you have different account types, they should be in different accounts, okay? So if you wanted to own bonds, there's an account type that is optimal to own those bonds in. Okay, it's not the non-qualified or the brokerage account. It's not the Roth IRA. It's the traditional IRA. Why? Taxes. Okay, this is a huge thing. Bonds are relatively tax inefficient investment vehicles. Now, not municipal bonds, don't mishear me. Municipal bonds should not be held in an IRA or a Roth IRA. They should be held in a brokerage account. But honestly, if you're holding municipal bonds, we have bigger issues. That's another story. And the reason is bond interest is taxed as ordinary income. It doesn't make sense to have that in a brokerage account. Let's have it in an IRA. And the reason we want to have it in an IRA is because bonds are not, the expected returns on bonds are not very high. The account's not going to grow that much, and therefore the tax burden is not going to grow that much.
Sure.
So therefore, where should we own stocks? Well, we should own our highest expected return assets in the Roth IRA. Why? Because that's going to grow tax-free. Mm-hmm. And we should also own stocks in the brokerage account. Why? Because under the current rules, capital gains and qualified dividends get preferential tax treatment. So this sounds like a small thing, and it's most likely, if you work with a professional advisor, go look at your portfolio. If you find bonds in the Roth IRA, it's time for a different discussion. I see it all the time, and it is, in my opinion, an inexcusable mistake. So let's talk about it. It's easy, but it'll save you a couple percentage points a year in taxes and returns. That's probably worth, over the long run, getting this right.
Tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
Mistake.
Yep.
All right. So what's number 4?
So there's a fun one.
Yeah.
So number 4 is, you're going to love this one, Todd.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Stop putting off estate planning.
Wow. What a concept.
We kind of started that at the beginning.
We did.
But I think this is so important that it's worth saying.
Okay. So yes, this is my thing. And so not having a plan is always more expensive. Mm-hmm. That's not legal advice. That is just it's just a fact. Not having a plan is always more expensive.
If you don't have any money and there's nothing to go through probate, I guess don't worry about it.
Yeah. It's not a concern. But if you have something, it is always better to plan. And it does stink a little bit to write that check to the attorney to do it. But I promise you, if that attorney is looking out for your best interest and is making recommendations appropriately, his or her fee is going to be less expensive than not doing that. Okay, I'll just say it.
Absolutely. Well, and here's another thing, Todd, and I think this is kind of interesting. I want to just take it even beyond fees.
Okay.
Because fees aren't the most important thing. They're important, but they're not the most important.
Correct.
There's only one way to make sure that what you want to have happen actually happens. And that's to build an estate plan and put it in writing.
Yeah. And so what we tell our clients is, think about, if you had a magic wand to say, okay, on the date of my death, if I could wave this magic wand and this happened, this is what I would like to see happen. That is our job as your estate planning attorney, is to make sure that happens, is to create the documents and the system in place to make sure that at your death, this is going to happen. And what I have learned, literally, I've been doing this for 25 years, and what I've learned over the last 2 years particularly is that can't be done extremely well or at its best without the input from a financial planner, someone who can sit down literally at the same table with the attorney. And you and I have very lively discussions. Sometimes we tell the client, you may want to go to the bathroom or go grab a snack because we're going to be here for just a little bit. And so we're going back and forth on stuff, and his mind thinks one way, my mind thinks another way, but in your best interest. It's getting to this where having that discussion without us sitting at the same table could literally take a year or more between the client calls the financial planner, here's what the lawyer said, and then they say something, and then they go back to the attorney. Here's what the financial plan. Well, but I don't. And it's just a back and
And
forth.
talk about wasted time.
Oh, tremendous
and
waste of
sometimes wasted money too if you're paying the attorney hourly.
Exactly.
Yikes.
And so, our approach is we sit down literally at the same table, a lot of times with the client there, and we hash this out in no time. It's like, in my mind, this is best. Well, in my mind, this is best. And I do know one time you came to me and your immediate advice was this. I was like, hang on a second. Their health is not well. They may need long-term care fairly quickly. What are the cash out fees on this? And you're like, yeah, that's going to be ugly. And so we went back and forth and we compromised on something that gets a great return, but if we need to do Medicaid later on, we can cash it in, and the fees weren't tremendous. It was just a much better solution that I could not have come up by myself, and I don't think you would have had that thought of, oh my goodness, what if they do need to cash this out? It was just a fantastic thing, and so I am encouraging you. It's not inexpensive, or it shouldn't be. If you're going to the cheapest guy or gal in town, please think differently. Go spend some money for someone who specializes in this. This is your cardiac surgeon's level of specialty, okay? You don't go to your family doctor for them to do your heart surgery, okay? This is a very specific specialty that there are attorneys out there who specialize in estate planning, who can give you really good advice and make sure that that magic wand happens at the least expensive, or in the least expensive way possible.
There's a saying, and I'm going to convert it to another one here in just a second. The most expensive attorney is the one that you have to hire after you hired the cheaper attorney to fix what the cheaper attorney got wrong. And it's the same with financial planner. The difference in maybe $1,000 in expense, I don't know, I'm just throwing a number out there,
Sure.
could cost you tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Absolutely.
And I'm frugal. There are things to save money on. Getting professional help with everything that you've built in your entire life is probably not one of those areas to go budget.
But just real quick example, if you don't have minor children, you're older, and you go to an attorney, and in your state, probate is an issue. It's an expensive issue. If you go to an attorney and they're like, okay, we'll do a will for you. I hope they're not charging much, because that is not great advice, because going through probate is expensive. But Todd, a will keeps me out of probate. No, it doesn't. It does not. A will is what tells the judge what to do with your stuff as you go through probate. And a good estate planning attorney, particularly if you're older and you don't have minor children, an attorney to help you avoid probate is who you need to talk to. And most times it's going to be a trust, but there are sometimes in very simple estates, very, typically low-level, simple estates, you can avoid probate without doing a trust. But if you want the magic wand to do some fairly complicated or just creative things, you're going to need a trust to do that, and you need an attorney who does this on a full-time basis and is good at it.
I think the kind of final piece there is, if you're okay with getting it 99% right, and that 1% thing that you got wrong is going to cost you, a couple $100,000. If that doesn't bother you, then you could honestly do it yourself.
Sure. Download it off the internet.
If the potential risk of making a couple $100,000 or a couple $1 million mistake is not a big deal to you, then honestly, download it off the internet and do it. Like, that's the easiest way.
Save a lot of money.
Who cares?
Not just a little.
But if you want to make sure that you don't waste a bunch of money, it's probably worth at least getting an opinion about making sure that that's the case.
Absolutely.
What you don't know can absolutely cost you money. Now, number 5, let's end on a really fun, happy note. I surprised Todd with this one, but he loved it. Number 5 is stop waiting for retirement to have fun and enjoy your life.
Absolutely. I can't tell you the number of appointments I've done when the wife comes in and says, my husband just died. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. She's like, we scrimped and we saved and we were going to have fun someday.
Mm-hmm.
And we never had that day. And
Yeah.
it just,
It's heartbreaking.
I
It
start
really
crying
is.
because you see the disappointment. Their entire life they've scrimped and saved to eventually have fun.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting advice from a financial advisor, because their goal is to keep as much money invested as possible. They're not going to tell you to go spend money.
That's true. But in my opinion, I act as a fiduciary. And so I've got to do the right thing for the client no matter what. And so for most of my clients, the right thing is encouraging them and teaching them how to actually spend their money. What I find is that the folks who tend to have accumulated enough retirement savings to be comfortable, it's because that they've worked hard and they've saved well, and they've prioritized saving, and they've put off fun until tomorrow, maybe a little bit more than they should have. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and I don't want anyone to feel bad about it. But the folks that's their situation, and really we see them literally every week. Every single week. What we spend most of our time working on is getting them to the point that they understand that we can deal with the technical side of it. But the most important work is actually spending the money that they've saved. And to me, it would be such a tragedy to save, in some cases, millions of dollars for retirement and then not have the wherewithal to spend it. Or what we see a lot too is in many cases, the older we get, the more challenging health can be. And it's harder to do the stuff that you wanted to do. And so really what we're encouraging you to do is to get balance. And you may say, Ian, I don't want to run out of money in retirement. That's the big concern.
That's our concern too.
And so it is a concern, but what if we address that concern? What if we create an income plan? We figure out exactly what you're going to need, where it's going to come from, what it's going to, what the tax implications are going to be, and we can figure out exactly what you're going to spend throughout your retirement. What if we can solve that problem? If you were confident that you weren't going to run out of money in retirement and you weren't going to get killed on taxes in retirement, do you think you maybe could spend a little bit more freely?
Yeah.
And what if we even put in the spending plan? What if we were proactive about spending some of the money that you've saved? You might have a different experience in retirement.
Yeah. Dream of your dream trip. Okay. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? Find out how much it costs. Let us know, and we'll work that into the plan. And you'll have money. And we've actually told, and I say this, somewhat with some hesitation, this is not for everyone, but there are sometimes you can actually give kids money. You can, if they need money or if they want money, we're big fans of give them some money.
Gifting thoughtfully.
Let them go buy the boat. Let them go on vacation or go on vacation with them. You pay for the trip to Disney. Okay. How fun would that be? Let us know what it is. Let us know the cost, and we can work that into your plan. And you'll be fine. And you'll have fun. The kids will have fun. The grandkids will have fun, and do what you want to do. And that's why you earn money. It's a tool to do things. And one of those things is to enjoy life.
Yep. And really our job is one of the hardest things that we battle when we're talking to a new client or a new prospective client is the way that they have interacted with advisors in the past, if they have, is really not the way that we work. And so there's some re-education, but a lot of times we have to meet them where they're at. They're used to looking at a bunch of charts and graphs and stuff and getting dazzled with science and leaving the meeting more confused than they started, but feeling like, well, they're probably smart, so they, I bet we're in good hands. We don't think that way, and we don't operate that way.
Sure.
But what we try to, I try to provide simplicity to people. And once we work through that, and there are some technical details that we got to talk through, and you got to understand your plan and how it works. But really, what working with a great financial planner and a great team really is what we're talking about. What that should look like is very simple. It should be you going, hey, this is what we want to do. These are our goals. We want to gift money to the kids or the grandkids. We want to travel more. We want to do this. How do we pay for it? And the clients that can grasp that, the ones that can go, oh, I get it. They're the ones that have the most fun, and we have the best relationship with them because they say, look, we don't really care about necessarily all the technical details, but we're going to dream big and we're going to enjoy our retirement. You figure out how to pay for it, and that's where we do our best work anyway.
Absolutely.
We can't dream the retirement for you, but we can sure teach you how to pay for it.
Yeah.
Gosh,
five cool things. Okay, 5 things
one.
you need to stop doing 5 years before retirement.
And look, if you've already retired, it's okay. Let's just work through those.
Let's catch up.
let's work through those now. And even if you're before 5 years before retirement, the best time, they say the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Sure. The next best time is right now. And so, no matter how close you are to retirement, if that's something that's important to you, what if we began to make a plan for these things so that you could find some balance, and you could not just delay all the fun for the future and make sure that you can enjoy it now while you're healthy and able. So
Absolutely.
that's what this is all about. Those are the 5 things you need to stop doing. And if you have questions, or if you want to get a second opinion, or you want to talk about some of the other strategies that we use with our clients, go ahead. You can click the link below, grab a time on our calendar. We'll have a conversation and see if we can't share some ideas that are a lot of fun. Now you know how to enter retirement without the stress of wondering if you're prepared, or how to start to prepare your retirement properly. And now, however, there's some details we haven't been able to cover in this short video. If you want to learn more about how to elevate your wealth, click the link in the description. Happy to have a conversation with you. We'll share those ideas with you, and look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks, y'all.